Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're having a good weekend and a fine night. I thought I'd take some time to talk about all the unskilled truck drivers on our roads being put there by the mega carriers. I'll wait a few minutes so a few people can join us. Just doing a sound check. Are you guys reading me all right out there? Going to be talking about how the mega carriers are putting unskilled drivers on our roads. Just doing a sound check. Wanted to make sure you guys can hear me out there. The mega carriers have created an unsafe situation. You guys hearing me?
Are you seeing any responses?
Here's one. Millennium Videos. Sounds great. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, loud and clear, Head Crusher. Thank you.
Another minute or two?
Okay. What's up, Rolando? Danny, go ahead. Hello from Wigan, UK. Loud and clear. Hello, Chris. Thank you for watching. The situation that these mega carriers have created for themselves and for us, I'm really upset about it. What they've done is they've chopped the rate so low now that they really aren't spending any money on training their drivers. So what they're doing to keep butts in the seats is putting a minimum amount of effort and money and training into the new guys, plunking them into a truck and kicking them out on the highway as quickly as they can so that truck starts making money. They calculate the profit, the forecast profit for that truck, what that truck they think should make. They factor in the accident factor, how much damage can the driver do, even in an accident. Subtract the one from the other, and if there's profit, they're good to go, because money's what it's all about. It's not about safety. So they're taking these poor drivers, giving them an absolute minimum of training, and sending them out on the highway with an 80,000-pound rig and just crossing their fingers and hope these guys can pull loads without hurting anybody or themselves. And we all know that it's not working, because those of us that run the highways see all the accidents that these rookie drivers are creating, and it's not particularly their fault. They're just under-trained by these mega carriers that are trying to save money and cut corners on the training these guys need to get out and operate safely on the highway. And the sad part is, it impacts everybody on the roads. It impacts those drivers themselves and families in cars around them and other truck drivers in trucks around them. It's a terrible situation, and it's all in search of profit for these mega carriers that have driven the freight rate low, and then they figure, well, we've got to pump high volume of trucks because the freight rate is so cheap, we're only making a few cents a mile, and we'll profit by shipping thousands of loads. It's a team driver, trainer sleeps and student drives, Nate. Yeah, exactly. That's what they're doing. They put a guy with a couple years experience in the bunk, a new guy at the wheel, and send him out on the road. And how the new guy is supposed to learn when the trainer is in the bunk sleeping, and the trainer's only got a couple years of experience a lot of the time. It's just, it's the unskilled training the more unskilled, and that's just wrong. And the safety factor on the public highways is suffering for that. I think this is crazy. It certainly should be illegal. Truck drivers need to be properly trained. And it's a dangerous situation operating one of these big rigs out there among families in their cars. And you can't imagine. They had a bad wreck in PA 4 months ago. Truck split dead in half. The trainer was asleep. Trainee was on his second day. Stories like that are popping up all the time. And it's just got to stop. It should be illegal for these mega carriers to put a minimum amount of training out for these guys. Now, the ATA just helped push through a law for driver training in the US that there's no regulated amount of in-truck training required for a new driver. So a new driver, a new truck driver, can get his license simply by sitting in a classroom and never operating the truck, pass the test on paper, and go out on the highway in a big rig. Now that's just crazy, because to drive an automobile, you're tested in the car behind the wheel, but not to drive a semi with that's 75 feet long and 80,000 pounds or more, and not give them a road test or give them any road training. That's just nuts. But they're doing it because they need to push through as many of these rookies as possible to get as many of these trucks as possible on the road, no matter how poorly trained the guy is, because the number of loads moved is what speaks to them. Yeah, Brian starts a new job tomorrow. He's glad he doesn't have to work like that. You bet you are. But some of these guys have no idea really what they're getting into. And you can't trust the carriers to regulate themselves, because clearly they haven't been doing that. And that's why we're getting all these wrecks. So I think it needs to be mandated by the government. And here we had our hopes up that the FMCSA would put in some logical guidelines as to the level and amount of training for these new truck drivers. But they were bullied by the ATA into softening up the regs. And, you know, they trust the ATA to give them the right information. The FMCSA trusts the ATA, and that's a mislaid trust. It's a false trust, because those guys are interested in profit, and that's not the safest way to go about it. What do you guys think? You must have all seen these big mega carriers like CR England and Werner and Schneider and JB Hunt. The moment there's a little bit of snow on the ground, those guys are sideways, upside down in the ditch and taking cars with them all the time. And I've heard lots of horror stories where the trainer, if they provide a trainer, the trainer's only got a couple years experience, and he is in the bunk half the time. He was Marcus, Phase 1 trainer at CR England. If I'm looking for the Trump administration to regulate anything, I'm going to be disappointed. No, I'm not relying on Donald Trump to change the trucking industry, but I'm relying on the FMCSA to get a little more common sense.
Did you read Marcus's comment?
I couldn't get all the way through Marcus's comment. I wish I had been.
Can I read it too?
Sure, please.
I was a Phase 1 trainer at CR England. We took new trainees after they'd been in school for 17 days and passed all their DVW tests on the road. I took them for 30 days after that.
Well, I hope that's still the case at CR England, but from the statistics, it doesn't appear to be that way. There's CR England trucks in the ditch all the time. Marcus, how many years experience did you have as a trainer? Can you let us know? And is this still happening at CR England? Because they're in real trouble the last couple of years with trainees and wrecks. But what about companies that do flatbed, just learning how to drive and learning how to load a coil? That's a tough deal. Flatbedding's a tough job, and securing a load is serious business. It's not to be taken lightheartedly. That takes some serious training.
Marcus has replied 3 years experience.
Yeah, Marcus, 3 years experience on the highway yourself? Geez, you know, I'd like to see trainers have at least 10 years experience on the highway. I'm a new driver. My company is a small company, and the training received, particularly in backing, was minimal. And this is from a small company. Sorry to hear that. They should be, even that, you'd think the smaller companies would take the time, because they find drivers hard to get as well, and you'd think they'd want to keep the new guys that they get. but they're so rushed and so focused on profit that they're not taking the time to train these guys. To become a good driver takes years of experience, but the least they can do is donate, 6 months of their time to train a guy properly and to teach a guy the different road conditions and how the truck will react, things like that. But they're just not taking the time, and the motoring public is suffering. And you know what else isn't taken into account? These mega carriers look and say, well, at worst case scenario, our guy has a major wreck and we get sued by the family that was in the car that lost a couple of people, and they calculate that into the formula. But what they don't calculate into the formula is that if that accident costs the rookie truck driver his life, what is his family left with? And his family isn't in the position to sue. I've never heard of a case where a family has sued the carrier because the family member involved didn't receive enough training, wrecked the truck, and was killed. I've never heard of a case like that. Most families are so grief-stricken they can't possibly think about suing the employer when that's exactly the first thing they should be thinking about. Should be outlawed to learn to drive, then do flatbed if a driver wants to. I agree. You should start rookies slowly and probably with dry van freight. Most of the best companies I hear will use drivers as trainers that have 10 to 30 years experience on the road. That's from Danny. Well, those are the good companies then, because that's the kind of experience you need in a trainer, not a couple of years. But, they're all in a big rush to make the money. They cross their fingers. They hope the guy won't crash. And a lot of the time, it doesn't pay out the way they think it's going to pay out, and people die. And I don't think that's right. I don't think they should be allowed to risk the safety of an innocent family in a car that just happens to be on the highway beside this guy when he goes into a slide because the roads are slippery and bad and he's traveling too fast. It's not right. Let's ban the mega carriers. Problem solved. Yes, it would solve a lot of problems, Terry. They need to teach them not to drive at night with their high beams on. Leon, you know what? New drivers probably shouldn't drive at night at all. That's one of the things that I would consider. In automotive vehicles now, the cars, the new drivers in a lot of places are not allowed to operate the vehicle at night. So why not the same thing for new truck drivers? Certainly the visibility is better in the daytime. But there's all sorts of etiquette, like the high beams here that Tim's talking about, running the high beams. There's all sorts of etiquette that truck drivers need to learn. My buddy went to England and spent 180 hours, spent 180 drives. He's with the trainer 60 team days a week. Well, they've got to take training more seriously at CR England because it's just not working for them with the way they're doing it. And CR England was one of the big pushers behind convincing the FMCSA that they didn't regulate a number of hours in the cab driving the truck as part of their training. Shane, big fan. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate it. Stevens is horrible. That's from Tony. You know what? I've heard some terrible things about Stevens too. And you think such a big company would be a little more diligent and a little more interested in training their people properly and keeping good guys. Train them well, make them good drivers, and keep them for years to come. Satisfy them, keep them happy. I don't understand why these big carriers just don't get that. They'd be better off to spend a little more time, a little more money, produce a safe driver that wants to stay with the company rather than just some poor rook that goes out there, is scared out of his mind, makes a mistake, slides it sideways and kills somebody. Why would you set up a guy for that? Drivers know how tricky big rigs can be on slippery highways. And it doesn't slide like a car at all. It reacts completely differently. Why wouldn't you take the time to run a guy through skid school, for instance? Yes, it'll probably cost you a couple $1,000, but think what it would save you in the long run. A company like Stevens could build and create their own skid school. But you just don't see these things happening. They're not interested in that. They're interested in loads and money. So what do you guys think? Should there be a better standard of minimum training for these new drivers? Certainly common sense dictates that a guy needs to practice behind the steering wheel of a big rig for many, 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 many hours before he's turned loose by himself on the highway and given a load and say, oh, go deliver this 2,000 miles away. Good luck to you. How about swift buying night? That's a big thing too, you know. It's because these carriers have driven the freight rate so cheaply down that now none of them are making any money. That's part of the reason they don't want to put money into training their truck drivers. They're just trying to pump these loads, pump these loads, pump these loads. Let's get a little profit. Let's get a little money in the bank. Never mind that the CEO made $1 million last year. That was his salary. Don't devote any of that into the training. Let's just keep the CEOs in their Mercedes. It's nuts. And it should be regulated because no one's watching these guys. They're just doing whatever they want and getting away with it, and the public is paying the price. Mega carriers will not do anything to lower their profits from Andre. And you're absolutely right. And that's why I think they have to be regulated and forced into safer training practices than what they're doing now. Yeah, the mileage rate isn't any good anymore, and that's been a big part of the problem too. No serious driver, no good driver wants to work for what these mega carriers are paying. So all the mega carriers are left with are the rookies coming out of schools, and these are schools half the time that are owned and controlled by the mega carriers. You know what? No, Michael, it's not. It's not worth it to buy a rig these days because the freight rate's so cheap thanks to the mega carriers. It is a competitive industry, Matt. Well, it's not going to be a fantasy in the long run because these guys have all driven the rate so low that no one's going to do it because no one's going to make any money soon. So the manufacturers are going to have to find a way to move their products or they'll be out of business. So I'm saying that the time is to change this whole scenario should start now before the whole thing grinds to a halt. Will self-driving trucks take over? Not in my generation, they certainly won't. God, they can't even get the sensors in my car to work properly, let alone turn a semi loose on the highway and send it down the road unguided. So no, it's, you know, they like to talk the talk, but the technology just isn't there yet with these things. They're a long, long way from making these autonomous trucks reliable and safe. So they rely on drivers in the meantime to move the freight. And my argument is, if you're going to rely on drivers, you better get the good drivers because the highways are busy. And there's all sorts of traffic. You've got to get a guy that can navigate through that safely and get to his destination instead of just sticking some poor sap behind the wheel, crossing your fingers, and know that you've got 10 more loads behind that guy. So if that guy doesn't make it, well, maybe there's a chance that the other 9 will get through without having a wreck. That's mental. You know, they just don't care. They just don't seem to care. So, but I think they need to be forced to care. That's what I'm saying. Because you can't trust them to patrol themselves. Clearly they're not doing that. So it needs to be done for them. And one of the best things too is just refuse to drive for these guys because they'll just take advantage of you. You won't make any money and you'll be gone for days and days at a time. You're better off going to work for a landscaping company or being the greeter at Walmart. So, yeah, that's why there's a driver shortage. But these mega carriers have created the driver shortage. Yeah, mega carriers just want steering wheel holders. Brian, that's from Brian. God, some of them aren't even capable of holding the steering wheel. But it's because a lot of them haven't been properly taught and trained, and because the money is so bad, there's no motivation for the driver to be good at it. He knows it's an interim thing until he finds something better because the pay is too cheap, and you're away from home all the time. And you're away from home so much it doesn't justify the piddly amount of money that you make. The money is horrible, Marcus. Yeah, we've all been out there. We know that's why we're all doing short haul work and town work, city work, because over the road trucking just doesn't pay anymore. And that's why they're getting these rookies to do it. And they're giving them a pile of lies and convincing them it's the start of a great and profitable career. And they're just milking these guys into the ground and hoping they don't crash.
Did you see the last comment?
No, I didn't.
Kenton? A positive attitude will go a long ways, buddy. I like your videos, except I feel the negativity tears down this industry. Change is part of the industry. Some of us still have fun out there. Comment.
Interesting comment, Marcus. I'm not saying quit driving.
Kenton.
Oh, Kenton? I'm not saying quit driving. I'm saying don't work for cheap. There are all sorts of carriers out there that pay good money and do proper training and do it the right way. Those are the guys to go to work for. And trucking is a great career. I loved it. I did it for 40 years. Still enjoy driving the truck. I'm just saying if you're going to devote your life to it, don't give away the farm. Make sure you're getting paid fairly for the work that you're doing. And these mega carriers are not doing that. There's all sorts of good trucking companies out there. Most of them are the little small guys, and they're doing a great job. But those are the guys you want to focus on. These mega carriers, there's no future at one of these mega carriers anymore.
Good place to train.
Yeah, it's as Kathy points out, it's a great way to get your training, I guess, as long as you realize that it's only a start, it's only a stepping stone, these big carriers. But as soon as you're competent, there's a driver shortage everywhere. So the small carriers, the small guys are still looking for good people. If you're one of those, get your training and go find a good carrier. These mega carriers are not the answer.
We're looking for some suggestions who you would say are good companies to drive for.
You know, who are the good companies out there that I would drive for? Trucking is so vast. You need to find someone that's, close to where you live. Ask around, ask the drivers at the truck stop who they work for and who they recommend. Do a little research and find the good carriers. They're out there, and they're all doing, local stuff in your area. You've just gotta look for them. They're there.
And you found smaller companies to be better.
And exactly right. I found the smaller companies much better to work for because they pay attention to your needs. They pay you more fairly. You're not just a number, you're a person. They know your name when you walk in. The smaller carriers are the way to go, in my opinion. Schneider's a mega, and they have a great pension plan. A lot of these little carriers have a good pension plan too. What do I think about running my own authority in 2017? If you can find a niche, a company that wants you and will treat you fairly, I think there's still money to be made in that. And that's the way to go. Unfortunately, up here in Canada where I am, that's not the case. There's virtually no point in having your own authority anymore. But in the US, there are still pockets and manufacturers that like small guys with their own authority. Because those are the guys you can really trust to do the job, because those guys have their own lives staked on this manufacturer keeping them. So yeah, I think if you're in the US and you find a customer that you can trust and will pay you well, that's absolutely the best you can do in trucking these days.
Trucking school costs $10,000. Forcing more training will force the price even higher. And except for Snyder's, no one pays you back for the training.
$10,000 for driving school, and they make you pay that. They need you more than you need them. I don't know how many times I've said that. The good companies are paying for your training. They're not charging you for your training. It's to their benefit. It's a scam. Don't do it. Don't pay $10,000 to go to driving school. My God. There's good companies out there that'll pay you to go to driving school and then hire you afterwards.
New Brunswick College has a class, one course of 12 weeks for $12,000.
That's, God, Sebastian, that's crazy. That's just taking advantage of you. That's the college making money off you. Stay away from something like that. That's criminal. A good small company is one that doesn't have to advertise there, word of mouth, from tomatoes. Absolutely right. The good guys aren't having to beg and actively hunt for drivers. The good drivers are finding those companies. The trick is to find out who those carriers are. Look around, pay attention. You'll see the guys with the nice equipment. You'll see the same guys in the same trucks year in, year out. Those are the guys to target. The little carriers that keep their drivers, pay their drivers well, and the guys are there for a career, not just for a couple months until they find something better. Michael, talk about the most reliable trucks right now. Freightliner and Volvo have pretty much taken over the market, but I like the PACCAR stuff. By the way, the good companies to work for aren't running the crappy trucks. They're buying the PACCAR equipment and stuff like that. Those are the companies that want to keep their guys. Look for the quality trucks. Collective bargaining. Matt, bargaining sounds like union to me, and I'm not a union guy at all because I think they blew it. I think they had it years ago, and with Hoffa they blew it. You can't trust them now. So anything that sounds like union just scares me off. If you're in your first year, it's going to take you a while to put your box in the slot. Just take your time, do it slowly, and make sure you don't hit anything. Get out as many times as you have to. And there's no shame in that. The shame is when you hit something. That's where the shame is. No, and you'll get it. It's just like riding a bike. Once you get the hang of it, you'll get the hang of it, and you've got it. But it takes everybody a while. Don't be discouraged. First year, man, you should be get out looking every 5 feet or so and checking where you are. Union reps driving Mercedes turned me off. And yeah, me too. And I've seen a few of them in Mercedes and Cadillacs. And that's your money that bought those cars. Even if you can't find your own customer, you can still make a good living. Yeah, it's true. If there, I hate to say this out loud, but there are a few good load brokers out there to work for too. And if you find one of them that's honest, that doesn't take a huge cut of the load, I've known guys that have worked quite successfully for a good load broker for years, and the load broker's fair with them, doesn't take too much, pays them promptly. Yeah, in the U.S. you can still make a living off those guys if you find the right broker to work for. And I'm not saying C.H. Robinson. So my solution to keeping our highways safer is, if you're a rookie and you've got to go to one of these mega carriers for your training, be very careful. Get your training and get out. If they start taking advantage of you or start forcing you into a drive situation that you're uncomfortable with, don't take a trainer that spends more time in the bunk than he does teaching you things. And I'm sure that you can switch trainers until you find a reliable one. I hope so anyway. God knows how bad they've gotten. But this is not only your life as a new driver, this is not only your life you're protecting, it's the lives of others on the highway. These big trucks can go horribly wrong very quickly, and it's so easy for someone to get hurt. So if you're in with a carrier and a trainer that's lackadaisical, do something about it. Don't accept it, because stuff can happen so quickly. You can be on your side, you can be injured, killed, and take other people with you. So keep your wits about you if you're in training. What would be a good company to work for, Christopher? As I say, look for the little carriers, the carriers that are taking their time. They'll send you out with an old guy, and the old guy will spend time with you. And you work away at that for months, because it'll take you months to become competent, even. Not good, just competent. Just find those trucking companies that don't try to rush you into situations where you're uncomfortable. You know, we have many other drivers who are Mexican or other ethnics taking over the industry. That's true everywhere, because some of these poor guys, coming out of another country, need to make money. They need to do something. They've got families to support, and sometimes trucking is the only job they can get. So yeah, and that truly hurts the rest of us, because if these big carriers can keep going on cheap labor, that hurts the rest of us. But you can see the situation that the immigrant is in, because he comes to a new country. He's got to do something to make money now that he's here. He's got to do something, and the only thing he can find is trucking. So, but yeah, it is hurting the industry. Will the Trump wall slow that down? Well, it should, if he ever does build the wall. But I don't know. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Local end dumper tanker. They're both tricky. They're both take skills. Yeah, that is the problem, Mark. They don't teach you to drive. And that's what they're supposed to be doing. But they're more interested in delivering the load than how you get there. And that's not right. Thank you for the knowledge I've learned coming from a mega carrier 16 months. Bumblebee. Thank you, Bumblebee. It will slow you down if a newbie runs into you. No, that's certainly the truth. You know what else is scary too? And everyone that's got some experience knows this. If you're in the truck stop at night and you see one of these mega carriers trying to set up to back into the spot beside you, man, that used to scare the hell out of me, because you don't know whether you're going to get hit or not. There's a good chance you will get hit. So I used to nose my truck into the parking spot. I go to the farthest parking spot I could and nose in. So, you don't want to get hit, but at least if the guy bumps the carrier, you can still move around and deliver the load. If he takes out your rad, you're screwed. But yeah, just watch the truck stops at night when they start to fill up, and you'll pick out the skilled drivers from the unskilled drivers. How old is too old to start on a skateboard? Oh, I don't know, 25. 25 is probably a good age for flatbedding. The problem with mega carriers is their policies. When you go out training and no real training on how you drive a truck. Well, that's true. And half the time they've got a guy that really isn't very good at driving as the trainer. And that's crazy too. And that shows you how desperate they are when they'll pick some meathead to ride with you as the trainer, and he hardly knows his ass from a hole in the ground. Pardon my French. Yeah, it's a training truck. The trainer's not supposed to be sleeping. Absolutely right. But that's what they're doing though. CR England and Werner and these guys are making them into teams to try to deliver more loads, and that's nuts. Those that can't do, teach it. I've heard that before. That is kind of funny. I don't see why these companies don't train guys how to back in after at their own facility. Yeah, it's the perfect place to teach them to back in. They should be spending days out there practicing backing in, blindsiding, all those things. Why not? Some of those guys have huge yards and all sorts of docks. That's the perfect place to. God, train them in your yards. Don't train them in the truck stop where you can hit some poor innocent guy just trying to make a living. Will the industry get better one day? I certainly hope so, Rusty. It's still pretty good in pockets. You've just got to seek out those niches and those pockets. Yeah, I hear you about the truck stops, Gary. It's yeah. I don't even know what to tell you there. I just agree with you. They don't teach backing. They leave it to phase two. By that time, you're no good. And yeah, they're doing it just to rush loads. Yeah, because it takes too much time to teach a guy to back up properly. It takes months to learn to back up well. And I guess they figured they just don't have months to spend training their guys. They should, but they don't. And you know, if a rookie scratches their trailer, half their trailers are worth peanuts anyways. You've seen some of those mega carrier trailers. It's just another scratch to them. They don't care how much damage they've done to the guy next to you. So, yeah, it's criminal. They do teach you to back into the same spot over and over again. No blind side, no angles. They got to teach you in a whole bunch of different scenarios and situations because every customer is going to have a different dock set up, and you've got to be able to spot too. There are going to be times when they tell you to pull into dock 12, and you look at that dock and you know that it's too tight to get into dock 12, and you've got to be able to stand your ground and go, you know what, buddy, I can't make door 12. My truck's too big, or that's cars parked in the road, or whatever. Say, I'm going to need another dock because dock 12 is too tight. And half the time, the shippers and receivers don't even look outside; they just pick a number, and they don't know, that Joe Blow's car is parked in door 12 or whatever. But yeah, have a good look at where you've got to back into first. Make sure that the trailer on either side of you is in their spot straight and not overhanging into the spot you're trying to get into. You've got to be able to size up the hole you've got to back into and make sure that it's a hole you're capable of getting into in the first place, something the truck is designed to get into. I've been into docks where the shipper or receiver will tell you, oh yeah, we get trucks in there all the time, and you have a look at that dock and maybe there's room for a little UPS truck in there, but there's no room for a semi in there. But some of these guys will try to bluff you into trying to get into the hole because it makes their life easier. Be able to recognize the transport docks from the courier docks. Been to Quaker in Peterborough lately? Not lately, but I've been in there years ago and it was bloody awful. And it doesn't sound like it's any better. You get some of these docks that were built in the 50s when trailers weren't even 40 feet long yet. And now look at us with 53s. They haven't changed their dock layout, but they still expect you to put this mountain of a trailer into that tiny little hole with no swing room. It's, goofy. Quit crying. I'm not crying. I'm just telling you how it is. Know anything about Easton's Trucking? I've done a little bit with Easton's actually. They have a pretty good reputation. I hear good things about Easton's. I collect a lot of money as a yard jockey. You know what? I used to do that too at one time. There is good money in that. I was trained by a 20-year veteran. That's the way to learn. That's the way to learn. Hello from Moscow. Hello, Android. I bet you driving a truck is different over there. Too many people on the road, period, from frog butt dragging. That's true. The highways are overcrowded these days. It's tough for a professional to get from point A to point B without getting hit or getting involved in a mess. And a lot of that is because the volume of traffic exceeds what the infrastructure can handle. Government knows that, but they just, aren't in the financial position most of the time to fix that problem. So you're struggling with a road system built in the fifties with traffic in this time and age, makes it bloody tough. That's why you've got to be good at this to survive.
Start to wind it down, wind it down.
Well, that's my take on the mega carriers rushing through these rookies and kicking them out on the highway too soon. I think it's happening far too often, and I think steps should be taken to prevent that. In the meantime, all you guys can do is just kind of be careful and keep your eye out for them. It's not their fault they're undertrained. It's just a fact of the matter. So everyone be careful out there. The object of the game is to get from point A to point B without getting hurt. That's what we all want to see. We all want to be able to go home safe and sound at the end of the week. You guys take care. Be careful. I'll see you on the back haul.
The next one is tomorrow night at 7, questions and answers, so any general questions.
We'll have a question and answer video set up tomorrow night at 7 if you guys are interested. I hope you join me. Looking forward to seeing you then.